This is Dungeon Master, a reverse roguelike where you control the final boss and have to make encounters for the hero to defeat, level up, and become strong enough to take you down. We've been working on this game for over a year using Godot 4, and our first devlog led to the most feedback we've ever seen on the game. Thank you to everyone who watched, played the game, and gave your feedback. Because of this feedback, I noticed a major flaw in our combat system. In the old version of the game, we had a colored mana system. The idea behind it was, since the player can't directly control the hero, they could instead influence them using mana. This solution was convoluted. Each color correlated to offensive, defensive, and strategic actions. The hero could spend mana to use skills that cost mana. Mana was gained from killing or being hit by monsters, and monsters could also gain mana because the hero's weapon had its own associated color. The hero got different skills from weapons and items, and certain effects and traits also varied based on how much mana the hero had. All of this to circumvent the fact that the hero is independent of the player, a rule we made up in the first place. I was trying to reinvent the wheel, and in playtesting, most players ignored the system at best, and at worst got turned off by how confusing it was. Even as the person who designed the system, I hardly paid attention to it, and never experienced the depth it was meant to have. Enemies that were dependent on it were confusing, weapons all felt the same, and items were either overpowered or irrelevant. So I ripped it out. This wasn't easy, and with it came the removal of many traits, items, and monsters that revolved around the mana system. But from that, I got to work implementing something more familiar, interesting, and most importantly, fun. In the new update, the hero uses different moves based on their current weapon. You can see what move they're going to perform while you're planning the encounter. This is inspired by how units preview their next move in games like Slay the Spire and Monster Train, and how as the player, you use that info to plan around your next turn. To complement this, I also introduced waves into the game. Before, you would just summon monsters and watch the whole battle play out. Now, each room has a certain number of waves, and in between rounds of combat, you have to summon even more monsters. This gives the player more to actually do during an encounter, and it complements the hero's moveset by letting you plan around their actions each round. A good encounter might see you summoning a high health goblin fighter wave 1 to take the hero's piercing attack, then summoning several spiders in wave 2 to take their AoE sweep. Another change in this version is that weapons also have their own pool of traits to pull from. That meant I had to come up with 22 new traits for the existing weapons, plus even more traits for weapons I want to add in the future. The original idea with weapon traits is that you'd select the weapons with the traits you want in order to build your run. But back when weapons all had the same pool of traits, there was hardly any consistency with what traits you found, and the choice of weapon meant nothing. Now, in combination with their movesets, each weapon feels unique to use and build around, and hopefully players will enjoy experimenting with different combinations of weapons to discover new synergies and builds. We also made changes to how the player selects the next room for the hero. Before, you selected each room individually with the option to visit a finite number of shops. The problem was that the decision making was too simple, as you'd always pick the best room for your run and visit a shop when you'd memorized your weapon, until eventually you run out of shops and you fight the boss not long after. Now, you select between two branching paths of 3 rooms each, culminating in a visit to a shop. For one, this adds more weight to the player's decisions as there isn't one ideal option each time, and this decision will become even more interesting as I add more room variety and even non-combat encounters. Second, it creates a more satisfying gameplay loop of conquering battles and acquiring gold, and then restocking at a shop to replenish HP and obtain new gear. Shops have also seen a couple of changes. For starters, players usually obtained way more gold than they could even spend, and with the added content between shops with waves and branching paths, that problem has happened even faster. So, I majorly increased the price of items across the board and added way more consumables to purchase in order to give gold more value. Secondly, shops now have quests the hero can collect and complete. Quests contain objectives such as killing certain monsters or landing certain moves, and pay out rewards at the next shop if they're completed within a time limit. This gives the player some secondary objectives to work towards during encounters and helps diversify gameplay. I hope to expand on this system in the future with special objectives that, if completed, can have rewards which totally change your run. The last changes I made were small adjustments to the user interface in order to better convey information. Things like the spinner and monster nodes only appear when they're relevant in order to reduce visual clutter, and cards now shrink when you hover them over an area that can be dropped to improve feedback. I also added a small animation that plays if you try to play a card you can't afford. Hopefully, these changes make the game a little more intuitive and a lot less confusing. As always, you can find the link to play the latest version of Dungeon Master down in the description. We look at and appreciate all the feedback people give on the game, so feel free to provide yours in either the feedback form or down in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on the development of the game, and leave a like to show you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for all your support on the game so far, and I'll see you in the next one.